There's a quiet tragedy I've seen unfold in too many women's lives, not in one loud betrayal, but in a slow, invisible erosion. As a man, I understand how it happens. You give, you forgive. You bend yourself into shapes just to keep the peace. You call it kindness. He calls it normal. And without even meaning to, the man you've cared for stops truly seeing you. Not because his heart has hardened, but because, like many men, he's grown blind to what is always there, forgetting that even the warmest light can fade. Hi, I'm Vernon again. And I'll tell you a truth most men won't. Being nice without boundaries doesn't make us love you more. It makes older men respect you less. Not out of malice, but out of a strange human blindness, we stop valuing what always says yes. If this kind of wisdom resonates with you, take a moment to subscribe to my channel, not as a habit, but as a choice to keep these conversations close. One day, a single sentence here may be the very thing that shifts your perspective when you need it most. Because there comes a moment when the softest heart must draw its line, not to push love away, but to call respect home. And when that moment arrives, it's worth pausing, taking a breath, and asking, what has brought me here? That question is where our first part begins. 1. Respect cannot breathe in the air of endless yeses. Respect between a man and a woman is like a delicate bridge. It holds when there is weight on both sides. If one side is always carrying the load, the structure weakens. Endless yeses, constant sacrifices, and silent endurance might feel like love in the moment, but over time, they rob that bridge of its strength. I've known men, good men, who began with deep admiration for their partner's generosity, but as the years passed, that generosity became invisible. Like a familiar song playing in the background, they stopped hearing it, even though it was still there. It wasn't ingratitude in the beginning, just a dangerous comfort that crept in quietly. The Roman philosopher Seneca once said, "Constant kindness without discernment is like giving to the ungrateful. It dulls the gift and burdens the giver." In relationships, when kindness has no edges, it can be misunderstood for obligation, and obligation is rarely cherished. Studies on relationship dynamics have shown that when one person consistently gives more, the other often invests less, sometimes without realizing it. Boundaries act as gentle guardrails. They remind both of you that your time, energy, and affection are offered, not owed. When you begin to set those boundaries, some men will resist. They may try to pull you back into the old rhythm because it's easier for them. But if you hold steady, you invite something far more valuable than comfort. You invite a man to meet you as an equal, not a dependent. And from there, another truth emerges. Saying no with intention opens the door to a deeper, more conscious kind of giving, the kind we'll explore next. 2. Why do you keep explaining yourself? Explaining yourself can feel harmless, even polite. But in truth, it's like pouring clear water into a cup with a crack. No matter how much you give, it never stays full. Each extra reason, each softening phrase seeps away a little of your authority. What starts as kindness becomes a quiet bargaining, as if your decisions must be packaged and sold before they can be accepted. Think of a seasoned captain steering her ship. She doesn't announce and justify every turn to the crew. She moves with confidence, knowing the course is hers to chart. The more she explains, the more they might doubt she knows where she's going. In relationships, your boundaries are that course. If you keep seeking permission to hold them, you're letting someone else take the wheel. Every time you explain beyond what's needed, you shift the center of gravity. Your boundary is no longer a truth you live by. It becomes a topic up for debate. Over time, this pattern tells a man, my stance is conditional, and respect quietly thins. Respect thrives where conviction lives. It falters where doubt lingers. The truth is, a calm, unembellished no carries more strength than a dozen justifications. It speaks of self-possession, and self-possession is magnetic. It draws the other person's attention not to your words, but to the firmness beneath them. Have you noticed yourself doing this? Softening your no? Padding it with reasons? Share it in the comments. Your insight might be the mirror another woman needs to see her own reflection. And here's the shift. When you stop over-explaining, you create space for silence to speak for you. That silence is not coldness, it's clarity. It compels a man to meet you in that stillness, to recognize the strength that stands without leaning. Understanding the weight of that silence prepares you for the next subtler truth, one hidden not in the boundaries you hold, but in the very act of giving itself. 3. The subtle trap inside giving. Giving is a beautiful expression of the heart when it is rooted in freedom, but it becomes dangerous when it turns into a form of currency to secure love or belonging. This is the subtle trap many women fall into without realizing it. The quiet belief that if I give enough, he will stay, value me, and never leave. The danger lies in the shift. Giving no longer flows from the desire to connect, but from the fear of losing. The distinction matters. True giving feels light, expansive, and even restorative. It springs from a sense of abundance, an inner knowing that your worth is not tied to the outcome. But giving that is tethered to fear or obligation carries an unseen weight. It drains you invisibly, leaving behind a residue of quiet resentment, even if you tell yourself you're fine. A man, over time, will begin to register the difference, though perhaps not consciously. He may not articulate it, but he feels when the giving is vibrant and free, and when it is laced with unspoken expectations. The first invites him to step closer. The second can push him subtly away, even as he continues to accept what is offered. Khalil Gibran wrote, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give." Yet to give of yourself fully, there must be a self that is whole, not one that is eroded by the slow leak of constant self-sacrifice. When you give from a place of depletion, you're not sharing your essence, you're spending it. This is why it's essential to pause before you give and ask yourself, am I offering this from love or from fear?
from fullness, or from the hope of filling a void. The honesty of that moment can save you years of unnoticed erosion. Because when giving is a choice, not a compulsion, every act regains its power. And something else happens. The man begins to feel the wake of your yes again. He recognizes that it is not owed to him, and in that recognition, respect quietly returns. In reclaiming the choice behind your giving, you give him a reason to rise to meet you, not just to receive from you. From here, we step into a truth that many avoid, the role of absence, and why sometimes stepping back speaks louder than stepping forward.
4. The power of absence. I once believed love was measured in presence, the constant, unquestioned kind. I thought if I showed up every time, for every need, I would become irreplaceable. But over the years in my marriage, I began to see a strange reversal. The more I was there, the less I was seen. Like a picture hanging too long on a familiar wall, I faded into the background. This was not neglect on her part, nor malice on mine. It was habit, the quiet kind that dulls the sharpness of appreciation. Philosopher Blaise Pascal noted, "Too much truth stuns us. In love, too much access can numb us in the same way." When your presence becomes a constant, its impact can blur until it feels like the air, essential but unnoticed. So I began to experiment with absence, not absence as withdrawal or punishment, but as a deliberate act of giving space. An afternoon to walk alone, an evening spent on a personal passion, moments where I didn't immediately answer the call. At first, the stillness felt unnatural, but soon the air between us shifted. She reached out more. She asked instead of assumed. And when we did meet, our time carried a richer texture. Absence works because it restores contrast. It reminds both people that presence is not an endless resource to be consumed, but a choice renewed each time. In its quiet way, it sharpens the edges of gratitude. Used carelessly, distance can wound, but used wisely, it can strengthen the fabric of connection. It allows each person to return to the other, not out of habit, but out of want. And in that return, love feels less like routine and more like recognition. Which leads us naturally to the final truth, the one that underpins all the rest. Without self-respect, no boundary, no silence, and no absence can truly hold. 5. Self-respect, the root of all other respects. There is a difference between being loved and being respected, and the bridge between the two is self-respect. Without it, every other boundary, every silence, every carefully chosen absence will eventually collapse. Self-respect is the quiet spine that holds all the rest upright. It is forged in the small, invisible moments when no one is watching. The times you choose not to betray your own needs. The mornings you rise to keep a promise to yourself. The seconds you pause before saying yes to be certain you mean it. Love without self-respect is like a garden without soil. Beautiful for a moment, but unable to sustain growth. Self-respect is not arrogance. It is the still, steady knowledge that your worth does not require validation. It allows you to meet love with open hands, not clenched fists, because you are not grasping to hold on. And paradoxically, that steadiness often makes others want to hold you closer. Think of the contrast, a candle in the wind versus a tree rooted deep in the earth. One flickers with every change of air. The other stands season after season, shaping the landscape around it. Relationships shaped by self-respect have that same grounding. They can weather absence, they can carry silence, they can negotiate boundaries without fear of collapse. In the end, self-respect is both the anchor and the sail. It keeps you steady in storms and lets you move with purpose in calm waters. When you carry it, you no longer need to be nice to be valued. Your presence itself commands respect.
When you step back and see these truths together, a pattern emerges. Boundaries, the courage to say no without apology, the choice to give from fullness instead of fear, the wisdom to let absence create value, and the unwavering ground of self-respect, they are not separate lessons. They are threads of the same fabric, each one reinforcing the others. Remove one, and the weave begins to fray. The world often tells women to be endlessly accommodating, as though love is earned through self-erasure. But what we've uncovered here is the opposite. When you honor yourself, you give love its best chance to grow. A relationship that survives on constant yes and unquestioned presence is not truly alive. It is only maintained. A relationship shaped by respect, space, and choice, that is one that breathes. And perhaps that is the quiet revolution, to stop performing niceness as a duty and begin living respect as a birthright, not just for the man beside you, but for the woman within you. If these reflections have stirred something in you, let them live beyond this moment. Share them with someone who might need to hear them. Leave a thought in the comments. Your words may become the turning point for another. And if you wish to keep walking this path with me, subscribe. Not because you should, but because somewhere inside, you know the next conversation might be the one that changes everything. And I'm Vernon. Thanks for watching my video.